Well, it's 6 PM, and so Mr. Schmidt, would you take roll?
Yes. Mr. Dahlbeck is not here. Mr. Husnick.
Here.
Mr. Munson is not here. John Schmidt is here. Mr. Steeler.
Yes, present.
3 out of 5 are here. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we approve the corrected minutes that John sent.
Thank you.
Because of the
Yes.
personnel thing. Otherwise, I'd make a motion that we approve those minutes, the corrected ones.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. I was not here, but
You can still vote on it.
I can still vote in favor, so it passes. So all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Passes. The minutes are approved from last meeting. Bolton and Mink this evening. I don't believe Silas is going to be here.
Oh, here's Kurt now.
Oh, here we
Okay,
go.
We will
Here we go.
change our attendance, and Kurt Monson is in attendance this evening. No, it's all right.
Glad to have you.
We were just approving the minutes. Did you have anything from last meeting? Were you present last meeting? Yeah.
Yep, I
Anything?
was here.
I don't know if you had a chance to review the meeting minutes.
No,
from
I
last-
did, yeah.
And no changes or additions? Okay. It already
Changes.
passed with a vote of 3 anyway, but I thought I'd ask. And Mr. Undum, Silas is not here this evening. Do you have anything on his side of things?
Yeah, I spoke with Silas this morning, just kind of wanted to go through, I'll go through his update that you have hard copies of at the dais there. An update on runway 1331, the pavement management project. So they did put that out for bids, 2 quotes came back. The low bid was Asphalt Surface Technology. We did bring that to council, council did approve that, so we do have a bid that was approved by council. It was approved pending the award of the MnDOT grant. We did put the request in the next day, so that request was forwarded down to MnDOT, and you see that a formal submission, it's included in the packet there. We did reach back out to MnDOT, I think it was Monday of this week, just to see if we could confirmation if that funds had been encumbered yet. We're still waiting to hear back from MnDOT, so they're still processing the paperwork. But everything for that maintenance project right now is on track for a spring start and completion of that work. So just want to give an update there. Master plan, the aerial imagery and inventory photos, we do have them. The high resolution aerial imagery is on the website now. So if you go there, you can click on a link. It takes you over to the high resolution aerial imagery. I also have the ground photos, which are basically an inventory of the hangars, the AD building, the lighting, the other things. If anybody wants those, I have that. I have those files on my computer. Typically, not a lot of interest in just kind of what's at the airport from the ground level, but we do have the aerial imagery online at this point. So if you want to go in there, the link is on the website. You can go in there and see all the new high resolution drone imagery that Bolton and Mink shot. The user surveys that we sent out, there have been 95 returned from resident or from pilots, and then 5 business surveys returned. It's a pretty big jump from the 18 and 1 that was out as of October 1st. So we did sent out 541 survey requests to adjacent airports and hangar owners. So after that went out, we did see quite a big spike in responses. I did ask Silas, I said, how does this compare? What do you kind of feel your feedback is? And he was pretty happy with the number of responses that have been submitted to date. So he feels that it's going to be a good survey group for the master planning study. We still have a couple of weeks left on those surveys. They're due November 17th. So if we have not filled one out yet, you still have a couple of weeks yet to get your survey completed. So right now they're pretty confident with the numbers that they've seen. They're pretty happy with the responses on that. They're working on their draft inventory and forecasting. And just so you know, the next airport commission meeting on December 4th, excuse me, Silas will be here with Chris, and they have planned approximately a 60-minute presentation on kind of the results to date. So it's kind of the first big look into the planning process to date and kind of what they're seeing. So they do have a pretty big presentation that'll be at the next meeting. So just so you're aware, the next meeting, the bulk of it's going to be a presentation from Bolton and Mink with an opportunity for Q&A at the end for them. So
Can they tell with that survey if someone were to log in and take it twice, 3 times? I mean, can they determine that? Like, say you had someone who was anti-airport and they wanted to log in 100 times, and in some way, or someone pro airport, and, I'm just wondering what kind of quality control they have over that.
I don't know on that particular one. I do know a lot of the survey tools I use, you do get, if you set them up, you can track who submitted, you just get an anonymous IP address, so you can see if it's
IP
multiple,
address.
you can see if it's multiple on the same computer.
Okay.
I don't know what technology they're using for it. I do know it exists, but
From different computers.
correct. And I don't know what the quality control is, if it's an anonymous survey. I mean, there's some level of, that ability is there, but yet there's somebody who would want to sit there and run through the survey multiple times to do that, so. I don't know that for sure, but I know that technology exists to track it. Any questions on kind of the master plan update today?
On the airport maintenance, the 120,000, that was, what did we budget for that when we just were forecasting what that was gonna cost? Wasn't it like 150 or something?
I think engineering estimates was 130. It
Was
came in
130?
under engineering estimates, so we were good. So I mean, I do have the amount on my council memo. I just don't know off the top of
I'm
my head.
just curious if we were high or low on
Yeah,
it.
We were
the
under.
bid was favorable.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think one of them was actually over the engineer's estimate, and this one actually came in under. So
Sure.
it was under what we had budgeted or earmarked for that project.
Anyone else have a question for Mr. Undum on that? Did you have any
Uh,
more, or just, I'm sorry, Sam?
Oh, no, I think what's happened here with the master plan and all that is a really good idea. And as, as far as your concerns, I think it'd be some telltale signs of somebody was doing that. I hope they have control of that and hope it works out, so.
Yeah, and I think they'll be able to speak to that at the next meeting when they come with the data as well.
Okay.
Just on the fuel system, pump and card reader system, I'm still waiting to hear back. I have emailed back to QT Pod for an updated quote. Confirmed with Silas today, just kind of on the sequencing of this one. So it looks like MnDOT will know in like May or June if there's any funding available from the grant from this past cycle. And if there is, we'll get submitted for that. If not, we're going to get this teed up for a 21 grant cycle. So either way, we have some time on it, but just wanted to make sure that's still on the radar screen. I know at the last meeting, there was some conversations of what's the size of the tanks, is the ability to split the tanks into two. We went out there, they're actually two 2,000-gallon tanks. I talked to Dave, and he recommended against splitting them just because of the number of levels. You'd be filling them at all sorts of different, times and stuff. So the system, the way it's designed, is designed at, 4,000 gallons. He recommended keeping it there with the two tanks tied up. Because I know at the past one, is it possible to split them and do two different fuel types? In conversations we've had, he recommended keeping them one fuel type tanks tied together. So 4,000 gallons total is what the current system has.
Well, we may have to add a tank then someday.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the other
That's
point. We're gonna have to add a tank at
'Cause
some
you,
point.
you probably have to have a different pump anyways. I mean, you certainly don't want any mixing going on,
Correct.
so.
And that was the other point too, was different hoses. So, I mean, I at least followed up with him just to kind of see if that was a possibility with our existing one, and he kind of recommended kind of keep it as is. So at this point, we'd be looking at a new card reader system and a new pump at this point. So that's what we'll get bid out and get that ready to go for a 21 CIP for sure. And if we can get it into 20s, if there's any leftover grant money, we'll get a submission in for that as well.
Anything else?
That's what I have from Silas, so it's.
Okay. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the Forest Lake Airport event scheduled tentatively at August 15th.
In the past, we've done that as a airport commission, and most of the airport commissioners were active at the airport. There's a new EAA chapter at the airport, and I think it might be wise to have the EAA chapter do it. There's interest there. Many of the personalities in that chapter are the same ones as here. The city will cooperate, of course, as much as we can, as much as we have in the past. But I think it might be best to let the EAA chapter handle it. They'll handle the Young Eagles liability insurance. There's a fairly good, enthusiastic group out there of EAA members. I just want to encourage, again, the public, the non-flying public who might be watching this or reading the minutes or whatever, to get involved, because you don't have to be a pilot to get involved in volunteering.
Yeah, Experimental Aircraft Association.
Yes,
Just for
yeah,
those
I'm
out
sorry, thank you, you said that, yep. But anybody can volunteer and join in. I put the date on there, August 15th. It's not a hard and set date, that's not a hard and fast date. It is the third Saturday. It's been the third Saturday in previous years. It's always worked out well, it's the third Saturday. That's just, I should have written the word tentative behind there, but That's what we're looking at. Usually we have decent dry weather that time of year. Usually there aren't a lot of competing fly-ins or events that year. Again, we have to decide, or I guess the EAA chapter would decide what kind of event it should be. Should it be just Young Eagles? Should it be a flying event? Should they have food or not? All those details have to come yet, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it'll happen this year.
So at what point so EAA, the chapter is already working on this, or we need to?
It's being
kinda
talked
hand it
about.
off to,
I
it's
think-
being talked about?
Yeah, I think we need to
I
hand
was
it
not at
off.
the last meeting.
Yeah.
It hasn't been brought up yet.
It hasn't been brought up yet, okay, but we've got time.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that we always compete with is the Maranatha Church and their burnout day,
Yes,
all that
yes,
kind of thing.
they have Hot Rod Day.
Because the other thing too, is, so many things have changed since we paved the runway there with where you can park and where you
Yeah,
can't park and that
parking
kind of
would be,
thing.
yeah.
And so, and then of course, the one area that we used to use for Young Eagles and stuff, that's gonna be part of the new building that's going up, so the Young Eagles thing might have to be on a separate date.
It
Those are
might.
things that gotta get worked out.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it amounts to. A lot of people have asked about an open house, and I personally think it's a good idea, but it does take volunteers and it takes a lot of work, so, hopefully we're back on the keel there, so.
Anything else we need to do on that, other than just
No.
to bring it up, mention it?
I just
and,
think that it should be handed off to the EAA chapter,
Yes.
and they'll take care
I
of
think
it.
agree, and whatever they need from the city, they can ask for
We
from
have to
us, and
cooperate,
we'll-
we have to provide, yeah, tables, chairs,
Yes.
porta potties, I don't know if we're gonna
I
get into that.
imagine a couple police officers during that time. I know the last event, there was a couple there, and parking.
We had fire
We'll have
department
to
out there
work
one
out with
year.
them.
That's
Fire
popular
department,
to have the
those
fire
kind of
department.
We always try to get volunteer fire people out there and that
Yeah.
kind of thing, so. Keep the costs down as much as we can, and
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, the strip of gravel between Forest Road and the airport entry.
Does anybody
Just that
know,
little 1-foot strip that
Yeah.
just constantly has potholes in it.
why isn't that paved?
I don't know.
well, let's put that to death.
I asked Dave about that. We're looking into it. Well, I mean, he's now aware of it,
Okay.
It was one of those things where I can't explain why it wasn't done. I don't know if it was something where it was due to the millings. I think that was a road that had millings placed down on it. They just didn't get brought over. So we're looking into it. However, right now, the time of year, it's
No, we're not
best time.
doing it now,
Right, but it's on the list right now. I'll just make sure that we look at it during next
okay,
spring as well. to
that's
see.
because, it's got potholes in it now, and you gotta fill them in, and,
Well, it never did add up. That's
No.
no question about that,
No.
so.
Yeah, and I can't speak to the origination of that, but now that we know that it's there, I will see if we can get it resolved. or
you can
it
get on the
fixed.
list and it can get paved,
Yep.
that'd be nice,
And it's, it's a small,
Okay.
it's a small chunk, so.
Okay. Item number 6, there has been a request to change the start of airport commission meetings to a little bit later, 6:30 or 7 PM.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm the one that brought that up last meeting for consideration. Sometimes, this time of the year it's not so bad, but sometimes during the summer, a guy like me, sometimes I'm running here to get here by 6 o'clock, And I talked to the mayor about it today, and being the first Wednesday, we don't get in the way of anybody else a lot, so we do have some flexibility on setting up that time. So if we wanted to start a little bit later, I just wanted to hear everybody else's opinion on it and see how they feel about it.
I'm fine with it. I mean, whatever time you want to start. Starting after dark or at dark later is great with me. I hate to have to come in from flying during the summer or something if it's a beautiful day out to come into a meeting. But there are others, Dan, your schedule, it all of a sudden pushes everything back and,
I can make whatever work,
Okay.
whatever
It doesn't
time.
make any difference to you.
maybe just during the summer months, from May till September, we adjust or something. But we can probably make that adjustment on the fly come April of next year. I'm certainly open to it.
And I think just as long as we're on the topic of meeting times, is any thought to changing the frequency of the meetings? And the reason why I bring this up, it seems like we kind of have meetings where 1 month we have a lot of action items, and then like tonight's meeting where it's more update driven, is it, and I had a conversation with Silas about this. I said, what do you see typically in your airports that you serve that are kind of, seeing the same kind of, agenda items that come forward? He said most of the airports that they work with meet either every other month or once a quarter, and they do that to keep interest up, and they do that so then the meetings are more productive, so to speak, because you have more action items at each one. Because when I look back at the past year, it's been a lot of items come forward for consideration for action, and then there's a update meeting, action meeting, update meeting, action meeting. So any thoughts on, or any input on just changing frequency to every other month? That being said, if there's a month where we have 2 months where you need to have a meeting every month, you can always add a meeting in, but just as a regular course for everybody setting up their schedule, going from 12 meetings a year to 6, would help to keep each meeting more action-driven and fuller agendas.
Yeah, I'd like to make a mention about that. I did talk to Mayor Bain today for about 45 minutes, and that's one of the subjects that came up. So it's certainly open for discussion and that kind of thing. I said, and I never thought about it much before then, but one thing she brought up, and she's right about that. I mean, a lot of times our meetings are 20 minutes long, and
Yes.
and that kind of thing. So I don't know how you guys feel about that kind of thing, because it's going to end up probably some sort of a decision. Well, the decision for that would be ours, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the council would get involved too. So.
I'm okay with moving the meeting back in the darker months. I have no problem with, or in the lighter months, the light or long daylight months. I have no problem with that. I also have no problem with meeting every other month if that's what we decide to go to. Yeah, some of the meetings have been short, and maybe we need one less commitment on our calendars because.
Well, we start a new year here in 2 months, so maybe we start out, just to think about it this meeting, put a vote to it next meeting in December, but to go every other month, starting in January or starting in February.
The only downside is, does it disserve the airport community, right, the public, by meeting every other month? That's the only issue. I will meet weekly if it serves the public interest, and that'd be overkill, of course, the other way.
One of the things we can do is kind of have a little get together with the hangar owners out there too, and see how they feel about it too. If they feel it's important or not. They certainly have a vested interest in the thing. So, but I think we need to have a little bit more in-depth discussion at their next meeting on this thing. So, hopefully everybody can give that some thought. Along with that, that conversation I had with Mayor Bain today is we talked about all kinds of different things, and we're actually going to have a workshop coming up to deal only with airport stuff, okay? Because we want to deal with the $280 thing that's been a plague ever since day one, and that's one of the things. The other thing is, the businesses out there that really shouldn't be there, and I told her right out, I said, if we can't get anything resolved with that, we might as well just open up the whole airport, because right now we have zero credibility to stop anybody else from doing the same thing. And that's what this is all about. It's not a situation where it's not a public street or anything like that. These aren't taxiways that you and I pay for every time we buy gas. And the guys that are doing this stuff, when they're buying gas, sure, but it's not open for the public. That's all there is to it. And so that was a couple of things we wanted to discuss, and she agreed to that. The other thing we have to talk about too during that this workshop is the fact that part of our income comes from the farming income off of around this surrounding area. And one of the big things is there's 123 acres that the city owns to the south there, and we've been getting the farm income off of that. Well, the city is we're trying to do our best to get that developed and get it sold. So therefore, that's going to affect our funding. And so there has to be a mechanism to make sure that that the airport is recognized.
Credited for the
right.
asset that it's losing.
Exactly. So there's going to be several things coming up at this workshop meeting. So once that gets set up, we want to make sure everybody knows about it and that they're there for their input.
I think the changes to the leases too that came about, that we should get all on the same page with the verbiage, and no reason not to go back to the original from the verbiage I've seen on a couple different versions.
That did come up today during our conversation, was to get everybody on the same lease. So not to change it necessarily, but to get everybody on the same page, because it gets to be kind of awkward. And I think you guys had that conversation.
Yeah, correct. I mean, and I think just to kind of temper expectations too, that's a lot of topics to try to get done in one meeting. That's a lot of work to do. So, I think part of it is more looking at timing, probably sometime in 2020, early 2020 to do that. I think as we try to year end and close the books on 19, we're, pretty booked up through the end of the year. So we're looking at, probably hopefully first quarter of 2020, getting that meeting set up.
But part of it has to happen before then because we're going to be talking about budget stuff coming up. And that's really what's going to affect this, whether or not we can pay that.
The charge that's
That
outside
charge for
of the
the
lease.
280.
I believe that some of that has already been, like, the funds have been pre-set up to do the transfer. So, I mean.
Well, we're coming up with a new list of city fees.
Correct. So, and to your point, so the fee schedule part of it, there is the airport, the lease revenue is in the fee schedule. However, if you look at the leases, those get adjusted every other year. I believe it's in March or April.
Yep.
So those would be done. So this conversation would happen prior to that conversation here at the airport. So we have until March or April when we have to go through per the lease to do the fee adjustments. We did that 2 years ago. This year we didn't. Next year we will. So the fee schedule will still be adopted with the old
Right.
lease revenues on, lease rates on it, and then when that conversation happens, we look at what's the adjustment in the next 2 years, then that'll get put onto an ordinance, which updates the fee. So it's procedurally, it still updates, so we have until March.
Of 2021.
Anyways, whenever we do have a workshop, it's going to be strictly airport stuff because there's so many things that we
Correct.
have to talk about.
It's actually March of 2020, because we did the last update in 2018.
There we go. Thank you.
So yeah, it's coming out this year. It's on the long-term plan next quarter. We will be updating that. So we'll have this conversation prior to that. So if anything comes out of that we need to do the adjustments, we can take care of it all of that one thing. So we do one ordinance amendment and get it all through.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's, we just got to get some things straightened out here. That's all there is to it. And, because some things are
going on
changing
long
that
enough.
are beyond our control. And some things that needed to be changed that should have never happened in the first place.
And I think too that, I mean, if you recall back, I think it was August or July, the financials picture that, kind of the projections, I'll update those. So those will all be current with kind of, where we currently are. We should hopefully by then have at least some of the master planning data behind too, so we can start to say, look at where it's going to go with kind of a better idea potentially where, what the growth will be out there with what we see, through some of this planning. So we'll have a better conversation at that point, but
Yeah, and
all that will be wrapped up.
So as far as the airport commission is concerned, I just want everybody thinking about listing the assets, what the asset we have here. And it gets lost in the conversation too many times, and we got to get that talked about. And so it'll be one of the things on the list, because when we're looking at the future here, we're going to see some things happen in the near future with Uber flights and all kinds of different things where the airport might turn into more of a maintenance facility, that kind of thing. Where I think in 5 years you're going to see an Uber flight where you get into this drone thing and it'll fly you down to Minneapolis and wow, all electric, and it's just futuristic stuff that's coming up. And that's why it's going to make our airport extremely important. And of course, the fact that with this business we're trying to develop that 123 acres there, I think the airport bodes well for making that as an asset for people that want to use it for commuting or travel or whatever. So anyways, those are the things that's going to be coming up at that workshop.
One of the other items that I'd like discussed at that workshop or some other workshop is county assistance to our airport. And I don't know if this is something you can look into, Dan, with all other city managers and things, but we at Forest Lake here seem to have the burden of the budget of the airport completely on the city of Forest Lake, when we're certainly an asset to the county, to Washington County. It's just we're so removed from Washington County offices being up here that we don't seem, think about that and don't tap into that asset. Yet we all pay taxes to Washington County. So I don't know if that's something you can look into, what other counties do with respect to the airports, or just something we need to add to that same agenda too.
I'm glad you brought that
to
up,
be
Don,
looking
because
into that.
that's the one thing we've never, ever gotten any kind of realization about the taxes that we pay there.
Right.
And so it's always, we're living within this budget as long as we get money from the farm, and that kind of thing, farm stuff, and there has to be some, at least acknowledgement that we pay taxes out there like everybody else. And hopefully, if we can get another 9 hangars in there, or in the future even more, it's only gonna get better.
Yeah.
Before we go to the floor, is there anything any of the other airport commissioners have? Any other items, Mr. Schmidt?
Apparently, a Lifelink helicopter landed at the airport, and somebody on the ground didn't know where the airport was. So they had a hard time finding the airport. Apparently, this happened, Mr. Eilenfeld probably will address this. He brought it up to my attention. I don't know if we can put in a helipad at the airport or not. I think that involves a lot more regulation in airspace, and that might be a Silas question when he comes back. But maybe we don't need a helipad for a Lifelink flight. I mean, they're just gonna land at the airport and somebody who's injured is gonna get dropped off and hauled off to the hospital. So I don't know how to solve that problem other than to inform whoever's driving at the hospital how to get to the airport. I mean, that's one thing I think they should know how to do.
Yeah.
I don't think we can have a helipad without an awful lot of planning and airspace and all that stuff, and I don't want to get into that. But again, Lifelink is free to land at the airport if they want to, so that was one issue. We should talk about snow plowing and snow plowing techniques, and I know Sam knows more about this than I will ever know. But if we can somehow ask Dave or the drivers to plow a little bit differently, maybe it'll work better. And last year was a ridiculous year, there's no question. But I wonder if that conversation should be had, or if that even should be a meeting item. Can you speak to that at all, Sam?
I can. One of the things that I did talk to Dave about that, last winter, because what was happening, the guys are plowing the snow both directions there, and that was not good. If they were plowing away from the aprons back toward the back of the garage, plowing
Right.
one direction, and that's really the way it should be done. What happened last year though, so they, it was just the drivers where they just didn't have the knowledge, I guess, or what do you want to talk about? But the snowbanks got so high there too that it gets to the point where they really need to go in there occasionally with the big blower and
Yeah.
blow that stuff in between the hangers or off to the end or whatever. So if you don't mind,
No.
I'd like to take the lead on that.
Please.
And talk to Dave about that. And, one of the things when I did talk to Dave about it last winter is the fact that they were swamped constantly, and they'd no more get done with the city streets than they had to start over again. And so, I understand the issue, that they were confronted with the airport, so, maybe we can get that fixed, maybe we can get it changed, maybe we can get a volunteer to do some of that work or whatever, I don't know, so I'll be talking to Dave about that, so.
There we go. Snow plowing wasn't good last year. Can we talk about how to plow differently? Sam will talk to Dave. That's what
Yeah.
it says in the minutes.
I will do that.
Anybody else?
And then there's another item, and that is the phone number for someone to call at the airport. The airport manager is still the previous airport manager's phone number. It's on ForeFlight that way. I think it's on the FAA database that
Gotta
way.
get that changed.
That needs to change.
Yeah,
It used to be the previous airport manager's phone number, and we do need to post a phone number. In emergency, call this number. I would be willing to put my phone number on there and accept a phone call 24 hours a day if somebody comes in.
we need to
but-
get that to Dan.
Yeah,
That's where it should be, because it's city office, and,
Okay.
and then we can go right from there, so,
but is Dan gonna take a phone call at 8 o'clock at night then?
I don't know.
I always answer my phone.
Okay, so the phone would go to you at 8 o'clock at night, and it's dark outside, and they
Sure.
busted their landing gear off, and you would call one of us or somebody to help them then. At least you'd be able to pick up.
Yeah, we'll get the phone number figured out. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get a aspect figured out of that.
Yeah, but that should be changed with ForeFlight and the state and everybody else, get that number straightened out.
Anything else, Mr.
I just
Sam?
want to talk a little bit about the helicopter thing. I mean, I've talked to my son about that a little bit, and, because he used to fly from North. That's what he did for a living, And a couple things that came up that, first of all, you're right. I mean, the people that are servicing the helicopter ought to know where the hell the airport is.
Right.
Okay, that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, they don't have to land at the airport. They could go anywhere. And so for us to make a special accommodation for that really would be a waste of money, I think. And so, I'm glad that they do use the airport, and all that, but, Brad's comments, it just wasn't a concern at all from his years of flying with those folks, so. Anyways, that's all I want to say about that.
Excuse me. I just wanted to add something to your, talking about funding from Washington County or
Yes.
whatever, other sources. Have we ever looked into Metropolitan Airport Commission?
I think there's a desire to stay away from.
Bad juju,
that.
bad juju. Don't, no. Communists. Don't.
Well, see, the thing of it is, they wouldn't provide funding, they would look for funding, you know what I mean? So, it's a different mindset, you know, and we're trying to stay away from that as much as we can. So,
Okay.
Anybody, any other items? Mr. Undum?
Just one more thing. I noticed we were out there, I think it was last week, driving through, somebody placed some, looked like some Jersey barriers adjacent to the road out there.
Yes.
Those need to be moved, because if we go out there to plow, they'll rip the plow off.
yeah,
Already talked to the gentleman involved. He's gonna move them way before it snows. He's aware of the situation.
Perfect.
Yep.
Just wanted to bring it out that they need to get moved before the snow falls, because Dave was concerned a
Yep.
plow goes through there, to
Yep.
bring off the plow. So.
what's happening there, he trying to protect his lawn there when they were going in with these big equipment for the new hangar down there, because they were making that corner and swinging out into his lawn there, but he is aware of it, so, thanks, John.
As long as they'll be moved, I'll let Dave know they're on, they'll get moved, because
Yep, we're on
if
it.
they don't get moved and they need to move them, Public Works said they will move them, but they'll bill back the charge for moving them.
I'll
So
call the guy too as soon as it snows and say,
they
it's
gotta-
time.
They gotta get moved.
Anyone from the floor have any items? Rich?
Mr.
Step
Eilenfeld.
forward, please.
How you doing?
Just state your name first.
Rich Eilenfeld, pilot out there. John brought up most of the stuff I wanted to bring up. The helo pad or the pilot thing is the helicopters go there. Once the ambulance shows up, the ambulance doesn't know how to get to the helicopter. So that's right, that, you know, a sign out there, because they end up on the other side of the pilot shack, and then they end up driving over the field. One time I chased one down to get them to the helicopter. I'm kind of seeing they're going to be using that more because of 35W gets congested and they got to get down to Minneapolis. And when I was on the fire department, Forest Lake's kind of a key area. E and W come together. So there's a lot of traffic we have through this area. And I can see them using the airport a lot due to the safety. It's a helicopter area, airplane area. They don't have to mess with traffic. They're not going to put a helicopter down in a Walmart parking lot or a school parking lot. They're going to look for a safe place for the helicopter where they know they can kind of control the traffic easily. So that's where I was bringing that up. I would like you guys to invite maybe the fire department out there for training, so they can understand airplanes a little bit more. We got quite a few airplanes being built, so they can look in there, see what they look like. When they do extrication, when they cut people out of things, maybe they have an idea where they should and should not cut on an airplane because of the fuel lines and the A pillars and the B pillars. And then the area out there has changed so much with the runways that there's some areas you just can't drive the grass trucks anymore. They're gonna get hung up. They should try and stay on the pavement, different avenues for them to get in there. If a plane goes down, if it's not exactly on the runway, but how different ways they can get there. So I'd like to see them out there for training. I've brought it up. They say, yeah, you guys probably have a lot more pull than I will have of getting them out there. If people want to show them the hangars, great. If not, you know, just wherever people are comfortable. The phone number and the NOTAMs, the snow, most airports, they push all that from the taxiways. They get it out of the area. Between the hangars, there's no good place to windrow it. With the low-wing aircrafts we have, they got to get them out of there. And like the taxiway by the fuel pumps, they don't even push that all the way to the end of the asphalt. Last year, I was doing that with my pickup truck because of low-wing airplanes and all that. Jeremy Dressel had to get his loader out there. People paid for people to go out there and widen it. I don't know if it make a difference or not, if they just handle it a little bit different at the beginning of the year. Hopefully this year won't be like last year. Last year was miserable, and the guys did a great job. They were out there, they plowed it. Thank them great for that. I guess that's everything I kind of wanted to bring up.
Thank
So-
you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks. Anyone else?
Just one of the fire department, we did have them out there a couple of years ago, so, but I don't mind doing it again. And if someone wants me to approach him, I can sure ask the fire chief about if he's thinking about doing that, so.
Yeah?
I'll talk
Good
to-
evening, I'm Don Ship. Got a hangar out at the airport. I was on the commission for a few years. I was glad to see you guys talking something about some of the problems we have out there. This is the first I've heard about that pretty much, unless it's been brought up and then nothing ever happens. So, back in March of 2016, the Airport Commission passed a recommendation to City Council that they didn't have the power to do. The commission voted to obligate land leaseholders to pay approximately $85,000 of the runway paving project. I voted against that resolution. The City Council adopted a formula for payment and embedded additional charges in the city ordinance that claims the charges were rent. Hangar owners do not rent the runway. Hangar owners rent the ground that their hangars sit on. Hangar owners rent land by the square foot. Hangar owners have explicit contracts to protect their rights, and the Airport Commission has absolutely no authority to suggest something that violates this agreement. Two of the people that proposed that already knew that, and they did it anyway. And I was told, well, Don, don't worry about it. We went to the attorneys, they can't collect it anyway. But if we don't do it, they won't pave the runway. And that needs to be corrected. It was an absolute violation of my contract and everybody else that had a lease out there. And I've asked for 4 years from the city to say something or do something about it. They haven't said one word to tell me where it is in my contract that I should be paying that. And yet they have the gall to send me a past due notice because I don't pay it. It's not in my contract, and nobody else can tell me where it is. It's time it gets changed. The Airport Commission should be advocating for contract restoration, and I think it's way over time that it gets done. Additionally, there's 2 non-aviation related businesses operating out in Forest Lake Airport. According to the Minnesota DOT Aeronautics Director, Cassandra Isaacson, and state statutes, it is illegal for non-aviation related businesses to operate at a publicly funded airport. She sent a letter to the city of that effect. I haven't heard anything to change that. And yet the city just seems to ignore it. We passed a resolution when I was on the commission that it get brought up to the city. Never heard a word about it afterwards. It just gets, well, geez, we won't do anything about it, it'll go away. Well, it's not gonna go away as long as I'm around. I'll tell you that right now. Because it's wrong, and it needs to be corrected. So you people have to start advising that council on what's right and what's happened. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to let you know I have had discussions with Sam and in getting that moving forward with the city. I know we would all appreciate it moving faster and having it done immediately. Cities, and as any government, moves slowly, but you're absolutely right on a number of issues, and hopefully with the workshop we're gonna have and the meetings going forward, we'll hopefully get those addressed.
I appreciate that.
Trying to get it on a workshop for a year, so.
Working on it. Thank you.
We do have a new city council in from the old, and they have their own agenda items that they got elected on, and those take a priority with them, I imagine, so. But they are aware of these, so.
The workshop.
Yeah, the idea was just get it on a public workshop.
Yep.
Because, you know, one of the things I mentioned with Mayor Bain today is the fact that they're the final authority on making those changes. You know, we're an advisory board, and that's it, so.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I move for adjournment.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
We have a second, all in favor, aye.
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 Passes, we are adjourned.